My name is David Brudenell, and I'm the Global Vice President and Head of Digital for Universum. I'm here today to take you through our 2020 outlook on the future of employer branding. If you're watching this, I'm sure that employer branding is an important agenda item for you. But is it for your organization? Is the state of your employer branding initiatives unique for you, or is it the norm? Over the next few minutes, we'll help to answer these questions and more by understanding how organizations tackle talent attraction and discover some of the obstacles that stand in their way. Let's begin. The importance of talent attraction is eloquently described by Daniel Shapiro in the paper Welcome to the Talent Economy. Over the past 100 years, there's been a fundamental shift in the way companies compete. Historically, market winners were those who had access to capital and financing. In a world where speed wins, talent is a critical asset. High-performing workforce can see what is on the horizon, reacting and adapting to the environment before the competition. Even in a world of high unemployment, high-quality talent has never been in such fierce demand. Talent attraction is a critical strategy for global organizations to outmaneuver the competition. If it's true that global organizations compete based on speed to market and speed to innovate, then not only is talent attraction a critical strategy, but talent is also a critical asset. PwC's annual CEO survey has found that year after year, CEOs worry about talent gaps and the effect it has on competitiveness of their organizations. In 2014, 63% said availability of skills was a serious concern, which is 5% more than the previous year. In our 2020 report, we connected to 2,000 senior executives to get their ideas and opinions on employer branding and talent attraction. It's important to point out that the survey of this size focused on employer branding is quite unique. We reviewed other employer branding surveys over the last 24 months and could not find any of this size and scope. Universum surveyed more than 2,000 senior executives, including CEOs, heads of HR and recruiting, employer branding and marketing, among others. Our goal was to understand current attitudes for different functional areas and industries, as well as how leaders envision change over the next 5 years. We detail a complex topic such as who is accountable for employer branding, are employer value positions working as they should, and how will employer branding budgets change in the coming years. Let's begin. Employer branding. Who owns it? Nowhere is the challenge for employer branding more evident than in how different roles within the organization view ownership of it. So our first topic of today, employer branding. Who owns it? When asked who has the primary accountability for employer branding activities, the gap between CEOs and talent executives' opinions is unsettling. 60% of CEOs feel that they own employer branding, and just 32% of CEOs feel the role is owned by HR. Talent executives, of course, view this issue very differently. Most say that HR owns employer branding. 58% of HR executives, 63% of talent acquisition executives, and 57% of recruiting executives say HR owns employer branding. And marketing is caught in the middle. 39% point to HR, while 40% point to the CEO. Let's zoom in to only compare CEOs and HR. We find these results to be quite jarring. Imagine trying to craft a best-in-class employer branding program with this type of dissension. What accounts for this variability? Surveys repeatedly show CEOs don't believe HR is up to the task. PwC asked CEOs whether HR is prepared to capitalize on the transformational trends in talent management and attraction. Only 34% report HR is prepared, while 9% claim HR is not prepared at all. Not exactly a strong vote of confidence. A survey from The Economist shows much the same. In a study of companies with more than 5,000 employees, nearly half of CEOs, 47%, say the head of HR isn't a key player in strategic planning. Respondents from the banking and energy industries both cite a much higher need for cooperation amongst shareholders. 84% of banking executives and 83% of energy executives want closer cooperation. This finding is not terribly surprising for two industries that have fought a storm of negative public opinion over the last 5 years. Overall, 58% are confident greater cooperation is achievable. Another 33% that they are somewhat confident it can be achieved. It's a fairly positive finding. Only 9% say they aren't confident or are not confident at all. CEOs are most likely to report that they expect or prefer no change in engagement from top management in the next 5 years. In other words, they are saying they don't believe change on their own part is needed. 45% said that they expect no change, and 26% said that they expect only somewhat higher engagement from top management. Those in the talent field tell a different story. Nearly half of those in HR and recruiting, 46%, said that they expect or prefer somewhat higher engagement from top management in the next 5 years, and 50% of those in employer branding expect the same. Marketing also indicates that they expect modest change, 44% agree. Only 1/4 of respondents said that they want much higher engagement from top management. Again, the difference of opinion between CEOs and their talent and branding teams shows an unhealthy schism. Those on the front lines want more engagement, while their CEOs largely do not see the need for change. That said, these numbers do not exactly advocate for significant change. Considering the differing opinions among CEOs, HR, and marketing, it's interesting to see that there is no strong call to action from any of these stakeholders for more engagement from top managers. Next, focusing on employer branding objectives. What is perhaps most interesting about this graph is a sense that there isn't a lot of consensus here. The x-axis only goes up to 50% in this graph. No single response was above 40%. Why are so few executives prioritizing these objectives? And why are CEOs doing so in even lower numbers? Something not shown in this graph, but all finding in our survey. It's hard to say exactly, but any one of the following could be true. A lack of clarity about which objectives matter most, a perceived lack of ownership for the discipline of employer branding, or finally employer branding not being viewed as a critical priority when the organization faces so many other pressing challenges. 61% of organizations have an EVP in place, yet the problem appears to be as much poor communication as a lack of strategy. 81% of employer branding professionals said that they have indeed developed an EVP, while only 44% of CEOs say the same. In HR, 61% said they have developed an EVP, and 63% of those in marketing say the same. For those companies who have had an employer value proposition, they were also more satisfied if they worked with an external partner to develop their EVP. Using external resources also left organizations more satisfied with how their EVP was activated internally. Next, we're going to focus on two topics. In addition to employer branding specifically, we're also going to today focus on personas and social media. Personas. What qualities are employers searching for in job candidates? And does it match up to what young professionals are seeking out? In their recent book, How Google Works, Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO and current executive chairman, and Jonathan Rosenberg, former senior vice president of products, talk at length about smart creatives. They are the restless, intellectually curious risk takers. They are creative and analytical thinkers that power high-growth global companies. They are, say Schmidt and Rosenberg, the key to achieving success in the internet century. Smart creatives are not found by filtering for Ivy League only students or looking for bright engineers. Smart creatives have a combination of skill sets, some hard skills and other soft skills that are impossible to recognize in a CV. Finding and attracting the most talented knowledge workers is among the most critical strategic tasks facing organizations. These are those talent as an asset workers that companies need most. Our research confirms it. Organizations are prioritizing these things like personality and cultural fit, both of which were cited more than pedigree, degree from a specific university, or grades. It's encouraging that these qualities are cited more often than traditional measures like grades or alma mater. Note, CEOs are much less likely to think personas will be useful in 5 years, and a surprising number, 26% of CEOs, simply don't know what they are. Talent personas are a fictional representation of your ideal hire for a specific role. They are based on as much real data as possible, along with educated guesses about experience, goals, motivations, and concerns. Personas are critical because, while technical skills will always be important, soft skills such as analytical mind, leadership skills, and disposition are equally valuable. Personas aim to capture both the quantitative and qualitative characteristics that will make someone successful in a given role. They are part of a larger trend among employers to find the right fit, for example, personality, disposition, and native skills, before teaching and training in those technical areas required for a specific role. More of this is available in our ebook number 3. Clearly, leaders will be in higher demand in 5 years, as well as entrepreneur types. Both of these descriptions are less about specific areas of education and training and more about the qualitative factors that influence whether someone will succeed in a role. These are not really surprising as answers from executives. We should note, however, that there is a big difference between what different areas of the organization expect of a leader, as we can see from the next slide. Given the importance of recruiting leaders, as we saw in the earlier graphic, which showed 61% of organizations will be searching for leaders in 5 years, it's clear that organizations should examine the ideal qualities of a leader. The results from the study become even more interesting when compared to our global millennial study released earlier this year, as we can see from the next slide. Why pay such close attention to what millennials are saying? In the US, for example, millennials, which will represent 50% of the workforce by 2030. Note that millennials are those born between the early 1980s and early 2000s. Earlier this year, we released our large-scale millennial study, in which we surveyed over 16,000 millennials across 46 countries. Asking a similar question to executives influencing hiring decisions and the millennials who they are often hiring, it's interesting to see the extent to which answers diverge. For organizations, this is a clear call to action. If it is true that 61% will be looking for leaders over the next 5 years, leaders must think carefully about what qualities, A, that they are recruiting for, and B, meld with the qualities millennials are looking for. For more details about this aspect of the study, download the 3rd ebook in the Outlook 2020 series. Next, social media. How committed are the employers to social media, and how well are they using it? For the sake of space, we only show digital channels here, but social media was the highest of all channels, handily beating out traditional tactics like career fairs at 17% and brochures at 16%. Our research also shows that about 20% of companies have a dedicated employee for HR and recruiting-related social media. So while social media gets the largest vote of confidence of all the channels we asked about, it's an area that few companies have devoted significant resources to. This commitment to social media isn't terribly surprising. If companies are to focus on attracting millennials, social media is a critical channel to master. Mastering social media, however, has a steep learning curve. Social media requires a two-way conversation, and many organizations have not figured out how to participate. Why end with a unified brand theory? Throughout this presentation, I have shown you the deep divisions within organizations related to employer branding, from the lack of consensus about who owns employer branding to the differing opinions about what qualities are important in a leader. Ironically, most organizations that struggle with employer branding have experts within their organizations who have mastered many of the issues they face. Marketing. Over the last decade, marketing has completely reinvented itself, moving away from advertising and promotion to education and engagement. This is the step talent attraction must next take. A study by LinkedIn and Lippincott looked at hundreds of global brands to better understand the benefits of aligning consumer and employer brands. And companies with strong marks in each showed a 5-year cumulative growth in shareholder value of 36%. We were surprised that so many claim that there is a connection currently. More than 50% said that they are either a connection or that they are the same. But we are not there yet. In 5 years, more than 80% of respondents think that there will be a connection within their organizations. This will be a major area of focus. and it points to how important it will be for organizations to bridge the divide between the CEO, HR, employer branding, and marketing divisions. Thanks for listening in today. You can find all of the insight and more by going to www.universumglobal.com/2020 Outlook. Now we'll open the floor for questions.